7 spine-chilling discoveries exposed in the woods, terrifying secrets of the haunted and cursed. Sara had always thought Hawthorne Creek was a picture-perfect suburb. That was until the tragic death of her husband left her alone with 2 young children, the silence in their home louder than any scream. Every corner whispered his absence. It was a nightly routine to tuck Mia and Ethan into bed and glance out the window at the dark woods that bordered their town. The woods were a mystery, filled with rumors of people disappearing without a trace. Each tale slithered into her mind like thick fog, wrapping around her heart with a vice grip of fear. One particularly chilling evening, she forced herself to venture out for groceries, the kitchen bare and her children's eyes pleading. As she drove, the neighborhood lights glowed like false sentinels against the night. When she parked, an ominous old wooden sign caught her eye at the edge of the forest. "Dangers unseen," it read, its letters nearly falling off. She scoffed at the superstition, brushing it off as town gossip. But the moment she turned her back to the woods, a chill danced down her spine, as if unseen eyes were watching her every move. Once home, she stacked the groceries, adrenaline still buzzing from the trip. But as she faced the hallway, the front door slammed shut behind her with a bang that rattled her bones. The kids stirred, sleepy and confused, but she soon convinced herself it was the wind. Yet, odd events continued to unfold, a relentless drip from the faucet that was once silent, strange footprints caked with mud appearing on the porch after rain, shadows flitting just at the edge of her vision. Panic clawed at her insides, twisting her stomach into knots. "Mommy, look what I made." Mia interrupted her thoughts, holding up her drawings. What was meant to be whimsical childhood art morphed into distorted figures with hollow eyes. They mirrored the old sign, the eyes seemingly watching her. The laughter of her children turned uncanny, echoing around her like trapped spirits. Ethan began to weave stories of imaginary friends that beckoned him to the edge of the woods. A knot tightened in her chest. The more she learned about the unspeakable occurrences in Hawthorne Creek, sacrifices, whispers, feelings of dread flooded her with each turn of archived pages at the library. The town's past was a tapestry woven with dark threads, revealed effortlessly in hushed conversations at school and the grocery store. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Fueled by fear, Sara confronted her neighbors one evening. Their familiar faces seemed twisted, smiles replaced with dark expressions that sent chills through her. Tonight's gathering felt far from a regular chit-chat. It was something sinister, an unsettling ritual masked as friendly banter. Their eyes glinted under the soft light, whispers echoing around her, growing louder as if calling her name, a name connected to the very shadows she feared. Panic surged through her. Seizing Mia and Ethan, she bolted into the night, the weight of dread pulling at her legs as they ran toward the woods, the howling wind shrieking warnings tucked behind ghostly echoes. A horrifying howl erupted from the darkness, sending shivers down her spine. Could they ever escape the curse that bound her family to this cursed community? There was no going back now. As they plunged into the blackness of the woods, branches clawed at Sara's arms like skeletal fingers. Each gust of wind carried unsettling whispers, swirling around her, entwining her thoughts in a frenzy of fear. The boy's small hands clutched hers tightly, their eyes wide with terror. "Mommy, where are we going?" Mia whimpered, her voice barely a whisper against the cacophony of night. Just keep running." Sara gasped, her heart racing. They needed distance. But the dense trees seemed to close in around them, an insatiable dark maw swallowing them deeper into its lair. Without warning, the world shifted, the unrelenting wind fell silent, and the air thickened. In that eerie stillness, the distinct sound of footsteps echoed behind them, slow, deliberate, and far too close for comfort. A low growl followed, reverberating through the underbrush, an unnatural sound that made the flesh on Sarah's arms prickle with cold dread. "Mommy, I'm scared," Ethan cried, his voice breaking the heavy silence. Sara skidded to a halt, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. Fear tended to close down rational thought. "We should go back to the car," she muttered, though a cold certainty sank into her gut that they would never make it back. The trees towered like ancient giants, dim reflections of herself, sturdy on the outside, but hollow within. "Over there." Mia pointed, her small finger trembling as she indicated a faint glow piercing through the underbrush ahead of them. Against her better judgment, curiosity pulled Sara forward. They crept toward the light, each step weighted with the fear of what awaited them. As they broke through thick branches, an abandoned clearing opened before their eyes, an old altar, draped in what looked like tattered remnants of fabric. The night air was thick with a rancid smell that turned Sarah's stomach. "Look!" Ethan gasped, pointing to the ground. Symbols marred the dirt, etched in what looked like dried blood. A sick realization settled in her chest. It felt like they had crossed a boundary, a place where unspeakable things happened, a site of dark ritual spoken about only in nervous whispers. Mia tugged at her sleeve, arching her tiny frame in fear. "I want to go home." But as Sara turned to comfort her, the presence behind them surged forward. A shadow, darker than the abyss itself, seemed to materialize from the undergrowth. Panic erupted within her, and she screamed for the kids to move. But it was too late. The shadow lunged past her, its form flickering like a flame before settling into something grotesque, an amalgamation of every fear she had ever known. Frozen in place, a deafening voice seemed to echo through the ages. "You should have listened to the warnings. Now the darkness claims what is owed." The air crackled around them, thick with the weight of dread and anticipation. Sara felt heat rise to her chest, her heartbeat drumming wildly. "Run!" she finally yelled, her voice laced with desperation. The children darted past her, but doubt clawed at her heart. What if they couldn't escape? What if the whispers of the woods were true? As they sprinted the way they had come, confusion swirled like a storm. Every tree, every shadow morphed into nightmarish forms. The howling from earlier mingled with their panicked breaths. Suddenly, Mia's hand slipped from Sara's grasp. She turned in horror to find her daughter frozen, eyes wide and terrified, staring back at her. "Mia!" Sara screamed, but her voice seemed to dissipate into the chilling night air. The creature loomed closer, whispering, beckoning. A single thought shattered through the fog of her mind: no one was ever truly free from the woods of Hawthorne Creek. As Sara lunged for Mia, she realized perhaps, the true terror lay not in the shadows that surrounded them but in the darkness that dwelled within. With the howl of the creature ringing in her ears, fate tightening its grip, Sara's heart raced. Would she save her child or become yet another lost soul claimed by the ancient forest? The terror of the unknown coiled tighter, waiting for the next move. Sara's breath quickened as she lunged toward Mia, arms outstretched. The shadow pulsated, a swirling mass that seemed to devour the moonlight. It stretched out, tendrils reaching, scarring the air with its dark aura. "Mia! Come here!" Sara shrieked, her voice cracking like shattered glass. In that moment, fear hung thick, almost tangible. She could feel the weight of the creature's malevolence bearing down on them, squeezing her heart. Mia remained rooted in place, her small frame quaking. The whispers slithered into Sara's ears, chilling her spine. "Leave her, she is ours." "No!" The thought surged through Sara's mind, a vengeful fire igniting in her gut. "Stay away from my daughter!" she roared, surprising even herself with the force of her rage. With desperation lighting her path, Sara charged forward. She could see the terror etched on Mia's face, and the shadows behind her flickered. Time slipped into slow motion, every heartbeat felt like an eternity. The distance between them seemed to elongate, a cruel game of fate. "Mommy!" Mia whimpered again, and the creature twitched as if provoked by the sound of innocence wrapped in fear. Sara's instincts kicked into overdrive. She lunged forward, shifting her weight as she barreled into the child. They collided, tumbling to the ground as the creature screeched, the noise echoing through the woods like the clash of steel. "Run!" she rasped, struggling to rise. The branches snapped underfoot as she scrambled to her feet, pulling Mia up after her. Ethan stood close, wide-eyed and fearful, taking a tentative step backward as darkness swirled around them. They took off, pushing deeper into the night. The blackness seemed alive, watching, waiting, as the whispers intensified, morphing into agonized cries that echoed chillingly. There had to be an escape, a way out. "Stay together. Do not let go of my hand," Sara yelled as they raced past towering trees that leaned inward like skeletal specters. Each gust of wind felt like icy fingers tracing down their backs, urging them to abandon hope. "How do we get out?" Ethan shouted, his voice trembling. Just keep moving." But the woods twisted around them. Familiar paths faded, replaced by an endless maze of dark underbrush and gnarled roots. Panic clawed at Sara's mind. They were spinning, lost in a web of shadows. Fighting sheer desperation, she grabbed at the nearest branch to steady herself, but her fingers slipped as it crumbled to dust upon touch. "Mommy! Over there!" Mia's voice broke through the storm of fear, her finger pointed toward a glimmer in the distance, a faint light shimmering through the gloom. It was a beacon, a call to something beyond. "We have to go there." "Are you sure?" "I see it." "Please, Mommy." Sara hesitated. The woods whispered doubts, fueling her apprehension. Still, they had no choice. With a nod and a tight grip on her children, they darted toward the light, footsteps pounding against the forest floor as the creature's growls reverberated behind them. They burst into a small clearing just as the world around them shifted again. The unnatural glow isolated a small wooden cabin nestled amidst the trees, much like a last refuge in a horror story. Sara's heart sank. This place seemed like the perfect trap. But desperation outweighed her instincts, and they steered towards the door, its paint peeling, the wood weathered by years of neglect. "Open it! Open it!" Mia whispered frantically, tugging at Sara's sleeve. "I'm trying." As they rushed to the threshold, the air around them shifted once more, an oppressive weight, a sudden chill that seized Sara's breath. She felt it, this ominous presence creeping ominously closer. Then, she heard it, a low, raspy laugh echoing from within the cabin's walls. The door creaked open slowly, revealing shadows dancing inside. Something awaited them. "Do you hear that?" Ethan whispered, eyes wide with terror. "Mia, Ethan, we have to go inside." Yet, as they stepped forward, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang, sealing them inside. And in that instant, the true horror sank in. They weren't alone anymore. "There's nowhere to hide now," whispered the darkness, a sinister promise echoing in the suffocating silence of the cabin. What was waiting for them? Would the shadows or the mysterious light provide safety or doom? The silence in the cabin was deafening, wrapping around them like a shroud. Sara's heart raced as cold dread flooded her with each passing second. She took a hesitant step forward, instinctively shielding her children behind her. The darkness felt alive, twisting and curling around the corners of the room. "Mia, Ethan, stay close," she whispered, her voice trembling as she felt the oppressive weight of the room pressing in on them. The cabin was small, cluttered with debris and dust. Old furniture stood like forgotten sentinels, their forms draped in a thick layer of mildew. A rickety table tipped precariously against the wall, its surface strewn with yellowed letters. Shadows danced just beyond the reach of the dim light filtering through the grimy windows, flickering and shifting as if alive. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Mia murmured, her small fingers clutching Sara's arm tightly. Sara nodded, fighting the sudden urge to flee. "We need to find a way out. Let us look around," she urged, forcing her feet to move. She stepped cautiously into the main room, her hands brushing against the cold, damp walls. Suddenly, a muffled whisper seeped from the cracks. The sound skittered through the air, wrapping around Sara's mind. She froze, holding her breath as the chilling syllables twisted together, sewing themselves into her fears. "You brought them here, you shouldn't have." Ethan gasped, eyes darting around the room. "What's happening, Mom? Who said that?" The walls trembled softly, and Sara felt a cold gust rush past, almost like a warning. "I don't know," she breathed, desperation clawing at her throat. Mia tugged at her skirt, her face pale. "Mommy, I just want to go home." "Me too, sweetheart," she said, fighting tears that threatened to spill over. Sara turned to the door, but it stood resolutely shut. The latch rattled, a mocking reminder of their entrapment. A shiver of panic curled around her spine. They had to find another way out. "Look!" she shouted suddenly, pointing toward the back of the cabin. "There's a staircase." Ethan and Mia followed her gaze, their eyes filled with realization. The stairs spiraled upward into darkness, the wood creaking ominously beneath the weight of dread. They had no other choice. Determined, they began to ascend, each step creeping deeper into the shadows. The air grew colder, thick and musty, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The whispers escalated, rising in intensity with each footfall, echoes of warnings and cries for help layered over one another, drowning out reason. "Mia, just hold on tight to me," Sara urged, trying to shield her from whatever waited above. As they reached the top, they entered a narrow hallway lined with doors, all of them closed. A chilling sensation prickled Sara's skin. She could feel it, something heavy pressed against the door behind them, watching, waiting, hungry. Panic began to twist within her gut. "We need to choose one," she whispered, and she glanced at each dark door, dread pooling in her heart. "Which one?" Ethan's voice cracked with fear. Any one that looks less threatening." They stepped closer to the nearest door. It seemed to pulse, alive with a life of its own, throbbing against the wall. Sara reached out, fingers trembling as she grasped the cold knob. "On 3, she whispered, meeting Ethan's eyes. 1, 2, 3. She twisted the knob and pushed the door open, only to reveal a room cloaked in shadows filled with strange, eerie artifacts that seemed to belong to a world long gone. But one item drew her attention like a magnet. An old mirror, its surface cracked and dirty, stood against the far wall that it seemed to beckon her closer. "Mom, don't!" Ethan shouted, but it was too late. The mirror reflected not their faces but an endless black void, swallowing every glimmer of light. And as Sara peered closer, she heard it, a voice deeper than the abyss. "You cannot leave." A cold terror gripped her heart. They had awakened something dark, something they might never escape. By the time she turned to snatch Mia away from the grasp of the mirror's pool, it was already too late. What emerged from the reflection was more horrifying than Sara could ever imagine. An entity born from darkness, clawing its way into their world. And it came with a promise. They'll never leave. What lay ahead now, in this cursed cabin, would challenge everything they thought they understood about fear and survival. Would they succumb to the darkness, or fight with whatever strength remained? The air thickened with dread, the cabin seemed to close in around them. Could they find a way to break the curse, or was this their final sanctuary from the shadows? The darkness surged forward like a wave, choking the air from Sara's lungs. She could hardly comprehend what emerged from the mirror, its form nebulous and swirling, making it impossible to define what was real. The creature seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, flickering in and out of view as if it were testing the boundaries of their perception. "Mom!" Ethan shouted, panic surging in his voice. He grasped Mia tightly, her small body shivering in terror. The air grew dense with an otherworldly chill, each breath becoming heavier, suffused with an overwhelming sense of dread. Without thinking, Sara lunged forward, pulling Ethan and Mia away from the mirror. But it was as if an invisible barrier held them in place, the entity stretching tendrils of shadow to ensnare them. No! No! Sara screamed, heart racing as she fought against an unseen force. Run! We have to run! In a desperate attempt, she turned and darted down the narrow hallway. Doors flanked them on either side, they were closed, dark, but they felt distinctly alive, as if something beyond was straining against the wood. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, clawing at their sanity. Each step thudded heavily against the creaking floorboards, echoing in the suffocating silence that seemed to follow them. "Mom, wait!" Ethan's voice was frail, cracking like dried leaves underfoot. "Just keep moving." She screamed back. But already, the shadows twisted behind them, a darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. They reached the nearest door. Sara gripped the knob, a desperate impulse driving her. It felt like ice in her hand as she turned it, the door creaking ominously as it swung open to reveal a small room, utterly dark aside from a singular flickering candle that barely illuminated the cramped space. Pushing through, they stumbled in. The flickering light cast jagged shapes against the walls, revealing old photographs that seemed to watch them, angles of faces that twisted into expressions of pain and horror. The energy in the room was thick, heavy with past sorrows. "Mia, Ethan, stay pressed against the wall." Sara hissed, the instinct to protect them overwhelming her. The whispers morphed into anguished cries, each name a ghost from the cabin's past. "Leave now, warn them." They filled her head, cutting through the silence with desperation. "Mom! What are those?" Ethan pointed at the floor as a series of dark stains snaked across the wooden planks, coiling like serpents. The shapes became clearer with each flicker of candlelight, revealing them as marks made deep, as if by claws. Mia's eyes widened, full of terror. "They look like blood." "Is this blood?" Panic washed over Sara again. "No, it can't be. It's just dirt." But even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. The formless creature from the mirror echoed in her thoughts, its promise gnashing at the edges of her sanity. They had to leave. They had to find a way out before they became another death. Rumor whispered in the shadows. The door began to thrum and shake as if something wanted in or out. "Mom, hurry!" Ethan urged, fear lighting up his face. With frantic determination, she dashed to the only window in the room. It was filthy and covered with grime. She pulled at it, yanking it up, the glass creaking in protest. Outside lay a tangled mass of gnarled trees, their branches contorted like the limbs of the damned. Nothing but darkness waited beyond that window, an impenetrable void. The door behind them slammed open, and the shadowy creature loomed larger, its many eyes glistening, hungry for their fear. "Faster! Let us go!" Sara pulled the kids toward the window. Throttling the candle's flame, she grabbed both children, urging them into the night. But the darkness pressed against them, a wall of despair threatening to swallow them whole. "Mom!" Mia screamed. A piercing shriek erupted from the entity, reverberating in the room like a storm. Sara hesitated, glancing back, but it was too late. They were running from a thing that thrived on their terror. What would it take to get away from the pulse of such a dark heart, as they leaped from the window into the black unknown? She realized they were not free, not yet. Something cold and winding curled around her ankle, dragging her back toward the cabin. "What if we never leave?" Ethan's voice quivered in her ear as shadows snaked up her leg. Sara gritted her teeth against the rising tide of panic. Was there even a way out? Or was their fate sealed in the darkness that followed? They landed on the ground, hard, but the grip of the entity never loosened. And as the cabin echoed the promise of their doom, Sara knew they were not just racing against time but against the insatiable hunger of something that would claim them body and soul. What awaited them as they fought to escape? And would Sara's desperate hope for survival be enough against the darkness that craved them? The ground felt like quicksand, sinking around Sara's ankles as she struggled against the grip of the dark entity pulling her back. Ethan and Mia were beside her, wide-eyed and trembling, their small breaths hitching in horror. "Mom!" They cried out, reaching for her. No! Sara shouted, the panic clawing at her throat. She could see the creature swirling closer, its many eyes fixated on them like a predator. Feeling the shadows creeping higher, she lunged forward, her body fueled by the primal instinct to survive. With one powerful jerk, she broke free from the grasp, stumbling forward into the chilly night air. The darkness behind them screeched in fury, a sound that made her blood run cold. It was above them, around them, every part of the forest melding into a suffocating shroud. "Run!" she yelled, her voice echoing through the trees as she pulled her children with her. They raced through the labyrinth of branches, their small feet pounding against the earth, fearing the spectral presence chasing them. "Where are we going?" Mia whimpered, her small hands squeezing tightly to her mother's. "Anywhere but here." Sara replied, eyes darting around as the forest began to warp and twist, the shadows spilling from the tree trunks like ink in water. Each rustle of the leaves felt like whispering voices trying to ensnare them. "Leave now, join us," the wind howled around them, warning them of their impending doom. But Sara kept pushing forward, driven by the need to escape. After what felt like ages, they stumbled upon a clearing, moonlight spilling across the ground, illuminating the twisted remains of what once might have been a small shack. It loomed ghostly against the forest, abandoned and haunting. "We can hide in there," Sara gasped, urging Ethan and Mia toward the decaying structure. "Mom, I don't like this place," Ethan protested, glancing back over his shoulder. "I know, but we can't stop now." She pounded on the door, debris falling away as the wood splintered. With a cracking moan, the door swung open, revealing an interior that was eerily silent. Dust floated through the air, catching the moonlight, creating an almost ethereal glow. Old furniture lay strewn about, engulfed in spider webs, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. They stepped inside cautiously. "Mom, do you think it's safe?" Mia's voice barely rose above a whisper. "I don't know, but we have to try," Sara replied, scanning the dim room. Panic bubbled up again as the feeling of being watched washed over her. Eyes were everywhere. She could almost taste fear vibrating in the air. The door slammed shut behind them, a sharp sound that echoed through the confines of the shack. They all jumped, instinctively moving closer together. From a dark corner, a low chuckle reverberated, coiling around them like a snake ready to strike. "You think you can hide from us?" a voice rasped. It was deep, a low growl that sent chills racing down Sara's spine. "Mom!" Ethan cried, clutching her arm, the warmth fading from his little fingers. She hushed, urging the kids toward a battered dresser against the far wall. It seemed like their only option. But there was no guarantee it would hide them from whatever was lurking out there. Suddenly, the floor creaked, the energy in the room shifting as shadows twisted around them, pulsing with life. Something was coming. Sara knew it. "What do we do?" Mia whimpered, panic surging in her eyes. Sara's heart raced. She could hear it, the slithering sounds creeping closer, and the shadows were whispering again. Join us," their voices echoed in a haunting chorus, melding their fears into a single wave of horror that crashed over her. "Stay quiet," Sara instructed, her voice trembling but firm. As they huddled together, heartbeats drumming in unison, the door rattled violently, something pounding against it, eager to get inside. "Do you like games, Sara?" the voice crooned, mocking them. "Let us play one, shall we?" "No!" she shouted defiantly, though her insides twisted in terror at the sound of her own voice. "Let the darkest secrets of the cursed begin," the creature taunted, and the shadows crept closer, their grip tightening around the children, dragging them toward an abyss filled with despair. There, in that moment of dread, Sara realized the game was just beginning. But what would it take to escape this twisted nightmare? A decision loomed. Would she betray her own to save the others, or could they find a way to escape the darkness together? The shadows lurked ever closer, the stakes had never been higher, and with each heartbeat, the question remained louder than the whispers: what horrors awaited them beyond the door? The trembling intensified around Sara as the walls seemed to close in, shadows pulsing with a dark hunger. Briefly, she felt the suffocating air swallow her voice, the laughter of the unseen entity echoing unsettlingly in her mind. Each breath felt like a betrayal, a weakness that could summon the dark force. Ethan's grip on her arm tightened, his sharp fingers like hot coals against her skin. "Mom, I'm scared," he pleaded, his voice quivering as panic laced his words. "Stay quiet, please," Sara urged, pulling the children closer, her heart pounding. They crouched behind the dresser, its wood splintered and ancient, barely shielding them from the unseen predator. The pounding on the door continued, relentless and insistent, but her focus shifted as she felt something shift in the shadows. What do you want?" she whispered, every word a gamble. Why us?" "Want?" A new voice replied, bewilderingly smooth, almost soothing. The shadows twisted, and for a moment, they parted. Something lurked in the fringes, a vague silhouette, draped in darkness, fragments of light gleaming from myriad eyes that blinked at them like stars in a black sky. "We want you to see. We want you to feel." Sara's skin prickled. She shifted slightly to catch a glimpse. Within the blackness, faces shifted and turned, familiar faces. Voices that had haunted her dreams, punctuated by screams. Friends and family she had lost in the past, eyes wide with despair, mouths moving but silent, muffled cries pleading for release. "Mia!" she gasped, the realization pulling at her. The shadows used her fears against her, exposing her failures, the brothers she lost, the friends who disappeared without a trace. They are not real." The entity's laughter rolled through the room, deep and echoing, mocking her defiance. "Not real? Oh, but they are very real, dear Sara. Just like the pain you brought them." "Stop it!" Sara shouted, feeling the world swirl. "That's not true." But the mocking words wrapped around her like barbed wire, each phrase digging deeper. "You were never enough. They'd still be here if it weren't for you." Ethan and Mia cowered close, each small whimper vibrating against her. Fists clenched, she felt the burn of determination set her heart ablaze. "I won't lose them. You can't have them." With a sudden surge, Sara pushed herself up, her voice rising against the taunts. "You think I'm afraid? I've buried too many people to be scared of you." The creature paused momentarily, its icy breath drawing nearer, the laughter dying down. "Ah, the brave mother. But do you truly know what you face? Would you sacrifice their innocence for your own survival?" The twisted shadows reformed, gently wrapping around Mia and Ethan, beckoning them towards the maniacal depths. Sara's breath caught, her heart racing as she saw her children being pulled, their wide eyes reflecting the chilling truth. "Mom, help!" Ethan cried, panic erupting like a raw wound, but what could she do? Every move she had made felt wrong, and the darkness whispered sweetly in her ear, tempting her to surrender, to give in to despair. "No! Not my babies!" Sara tore herself from the dread, her voice shattering through the air like glass. "You won't take them. I will fight." The shadows hesitated, swirling around the children but easing back, revealing the grinning visage of the entity. "Fight? Oh, what fun! We'll see what kind of game you play if you can decide who to save. Choose wisely, or lose what you hold dear." The room filled with a deafening silence. Culminating dread hung thick in the air. Torn between saving her children and a truth she had long buried, Sara's mind spun. The game was on, but how could she win in a realm where shadows bent the very nature of reality? All at once, she felt the ground shift beneath her, a gaping maw of darkness opening within the floor, jaws eager to devour them whole. The time for thinking was over. Could she save them all, or would she have to betray one to save the others? As the shadows closed in, a decision loomed, and Sara could only wonder, what would she do when the house of horrors began to get personal? The darkness thickened, pooling around Sara, her pulse racing. The shadows danced like flames, bright and hungry, whispering promises filled with dread. "Choose," the entity cooed, its voice a chilling breeze against her ear, carrying the weight of her past. Panic gripped her throat. How could she choose? The faces of her children burned brightly in her mind, as vivid as the memories of loss that haunted her. She could almost hear them arguing against the darkness, their voices echoing like a choir of innocence. "Mom! Please!" Mia's small voice emerged, trembling with fear, clawing at her heart. Each word wrapped tighter around her chest. Just then, Sara saw it, a blinding flash of light, illuminating the room for a heartbeat. The light painted the shadows in sickly hues, revealing glimpses of her children's frightened faces, reflecting pure terror. The glimpse tore through her resolve, and desperation surged within her. "Stay close!" she shouted, pulling the kids into her embrace as the darkness lurched forward, wrapping around them with icy fingers. The walls pulsed, narrowing like a vice, and she could feel the weight of the entity's malice pressing down like a storm. "Do you think they'll save you?" The voice taunted, laced with amusement. "You cannot protect them while weighed down by your own sins." The air grew thick with a rancid odor, and Sara struggled to breathe, each breath an act of defiance against the suffocating dread. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But the edges of the room warped, the furniture melting into monstrous shapes. "Mom, I'm so scared." Ethan's voice quivered against the backdrop of the entity's laughter, the sound seeping through her bones, leaving a chill that no warmth could banish. Sara squeezed her eyes shut, willing the darkness to reveal a way out. Then, an idea sparked. She couldn't let the shadows define her. "I'll choose," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremors in her body. The entity paused. "Choose wisely, Mother." "I choose," she hesitated, the weight of her choice suffocating. "I choose to fight. I want to let you win." The shadows responded with a thunderous roar, crashing against her like waves in a storm, their icy tendrils seeking to crush her spirit. Yet, within the chaos, she discovered a flicker of strength. Suddenly, the room swirled violently, and deep within the maelstrom, a door formed, a shimmering portal full of colors she had never encountered. Was this the entity's weakness? "Look, kids!" Sara yelled, dodging a lashing tendril. "We can escape. Run towards the door." Ethan hesitated, fear holding him back. "What about you, Mom? We can't leave you." "Go. I'll follow right behind." The shadows screamed their protest, dark tendrils reaching for her, anger thrumming through the air. With a burst of courage, they sprinted toward the portal. The air crackled with energy, a storm of light and dark melding together. Just as Mia crossed the threshold, a scream tore from the entity's lips, twisting her spine and cracking the air. "You think you can leave without consequence? You have made your choice." The door flickered. The shadows began stripping away, fragments of fear peeling from Sara with every second, but an anchor of darkness held fast to her. She felt it tearing at her heart, threatening her with memories, deaths, regrets, failures. "Mom!" Ethan cried, reaching for her. The ground beneath her began to quake. In one final surge of power, she tore free from the shadow's grip. "I'll never let you take my children." With her soul galvanized by love, she leapt toward the door, feeling the shadows claw at her heels. Suddenly, everything exploded into blinding light. The room shattered. Sara found herself sprawled on the ground of an unfamiliar place, disoriented but alive. Breathing heavily, she turned to her children, desperately assessing their conditions. They seemed unharmed, but behind them, an ominous chill seeped into the air, an echo of the entity's laughter lingering like smoke. "What did we leave behind?" she whispered, dread settling in her stomach like lead. The shadows had not been fully banished. And from the corner of her eye, a flicker of movement beckoned, an all too familiar face emerging from the shadows, eyes empty as an abyss. Who was it? In that moment, Sara realized the game was just beginning. Sarah's heart raced as she turned to face the shadowy figure materializing behind her children. The laughter of the entity echoed in her mind, mingling with the thrum of uncertainty pressing down on her. She could feel the air thickening, weighed down by memories she thought she had escaped. "Mia, Ethan, stay close," she commanded, her voice trembling slightly despite her efforts. The figures wavered in the dim light, blurred outlines of something both familiar and grotesque. As the darkness around her deepened, a shudder raced through her blood. "Mom?" Mia's voice was small, barely audible over the ominous whispers that slithered through the air. "What is happening?" "I don't know, but we have to," she began, but the words stalled in her throat. An icy wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of decay. She stumbled backward, instinctively shielding her children as if they could hide from the horror unfolding before them. The figure stepped forward, emerging from the shadows. It was a woman. Tattered clothes clung to her as if soaked in the very essence of despair, her face twisted in anguish. "Help me," she rasped, voice cracking. "You have to help me. Who are you?" Sara shot back, the urgency of the moment slicing through her fears. She could sense the darkness curling closer, taut with anticipation, ready to pounce. The woman stretched out a hand, fingernails broken and dirty. "They want to let me leave. Oh, God. Please, help." Her eyes shone with a wild desperation that sent tremors through Sarah's heart, but Sara knew better. A voice inside cautioned her this was surely a trick, a remnant of the entity clinging to the edges of her reality. The spectre's anguish felt real, but she had fought so hard to escape the grasp of darkness. Gasps of fear rolled off her children, and for a fleeting moment, Sara envisioned a world in which they could run forever free from terror. Then the laughter returned, resonating deeply, crashing through the clearing like thunder. "You think you can save her? You are more powerful than you know, but your heart is still weak." Ethan peered at the woman, innocent confusion knitting his brow. "Mom, maybe we should help her." "No," Sara snapped, panic rising. "It's a trick, Ethan." Her heart sank. Could her child's innocence draw them back into the abyss? The woman's face twisted into a mask of fury, shadows swirling about her like an angry storm. "Feed me," the woman shrieked, her voice splintering with malice. "Feed me your pain. The only way to survive is to surrender. Mia, hold on to me," Sara shouted, instinctively clutching her daughter tight. As the specter lunged forward, instincts kicked in, driving her to push her children behind her as she stepped forward. "Leave us alone. I want to let you take them. You cannot deny what you have done." The figure growled, its voice shifting into a cacophony that echoed Sarah's own regrets and losses. "They will carry your sins forever." Rage ignited in Sarah's chest. "No!" she screamed, grounding herself. This was her fight. She wouldn't let the shadows taint her children's hearts. "You'll take nothing from me." The shadows converged with a ferocity that shook the ground beneath her, sending tremors through her body. Memories flashed before her eyes, failed moments, grief, weaknesses laid bare. Then, without warning, the woman split apart, scattering into hundreds of ghastly fragments, each whispering her darkest nightmares. Sara blinked, disbelief gripping her. No longer was it just one figure, now there were dozens, eyes glinting with hunger. They swirled around her like a living tide, leering and beckoning for her to give in. "Make a choice," they hissed in unison, the echoes creating a nightmarish symphony. "Mia. Ethan." She felt her children cling to her as the shadows ascended, climbing up their legs, knotting like vines around their bodies, taunting them with whispers of their own secrets. In that moment, Sara understood. The shadows were far from defeated, they were merely waiting, lurking for the right moment to pounce again. "Hold on," she cried out, mustering every ounce of strength she had left. But just as determination surged through her veins, a blinding light erupted from the forest, illuminating everything. In the center of it all stood a figure, someone who shouldn't be there, someone she thought was long gone. "Mom?" is that you?" A shiver detached from her spine as she turned, heart collapsing into her stomach. "Josh?" In that instant, with the shadows encroaching ominously closer, confusion clawed at her throat. What had she returned to? Before Sara could grasp the reality of the moment, the darkness writhed, and the entity's laughter crescendoed. What was waiting for them now? Josh stood in the ruptured light, eyes wide but hushed, a gentle smile breaking through the tension. Sara felt an ache deep in her chest, a flash of hope mixed with heartbreak. "Josh! How?" But before she could finish, the spiraling shadows crackled, a furious reminder of the entity's hunger. "Don't let them take you, Sara!" Josh shouted, stepping forward, his voice cutting through the chaotic whispers. "You have to confront the darkness. Remember who you are." The shadows writhed, narrowing down on Josh, and he wilted slightly, but his resolve didn't falter. "Face it, Sara. Face it for the kids." Fear clawed at her throat. She glanced at Mia and Ethan, their small trembling bodies crushed against her, eyes pleading for safety. "I can't let it take you. I can't." The shadows spun faster, screeching promises of surrender. "He is nothing now. You cannot be saved." They hissed, circling around Josh, dark tendrils reaching for him, strange echoes distorting their words. "You brought them here. You belong to us." "No!" Sara roared. Determination surged within her. "I want to let you win." Every ounce of fear, sorrow, and pain rose like molten fire in her veins. She stepped forward, pushing against the shadows, forcing them back. The moment she crossed an invisible barrier, the darkness hissed, recoiling as if burned by her very essence. Light radiated from her, a warmth she felt surge from her heart, illuminating the shadows flickering around them. "Josh!" she shouted, locking her gaze with his. The shimmering hope in his eyes fueled her conviction. "You're with us. You always will be." With renewed strength, Sara gathered Mia and Ethan tightly in her embrace, her body instinctively becoming a shield. Memories flooded back, happy times, laughter, the love they shared as a family. This connection, this bond, ignited a power the darkness couldn't grasp. No more pain, no more loss. She cried defiantly, channeling everything she had into that light. "We are not afraid of you." The shadows screeched, twisting violently, their forms contorting to escape the brilliant stabbing through their very existence. They writhed and slithered, fracturing into shards of darkness, revealing the light behind. A soft voice broke through the chaos, almost melodic. "You have the strength, Sara. You chose life, love, and courage. Embrace it." And in that moment, the boundaries of her heart expanded like a rising tide, illuminating spaces that had long been hidden in darkness. She felt the warmth of Josh's spirit beside her, infusing her with the strength to fight. "Together!" Sara called, clutching her children close as the light erupted in a whirlwind. She could feel Josh's presence echoing through her, propelling her forward, igniting their spirits with shimmering energy. "Now!" With a resounding roar, she thrust the light toward the deepest shadows, piercing through the heart of darkness. The shadows shrieked, unraveling at the seams, flooding the air with a cacophony of distorted voices scattering like autumn leaves caught in a storm. The air shimmered, collapsing under the brightness, and with one final push, Sara watched the darkness implode, disintegrating into nothingness. She squeezed her eyes shut as the pressure surged, enveloping them in a blinding white light. Moments later, everything fell silent. Sara's eyes fluttered open, the bright sun bathing them in warmth. They stood in a lush clearing, vibrant and alive. The horror of the cabin melted away into distant memory, whispers silenced like a faded dream. "Mama?" Mia's voice broke through the quiet, eyes wide and curious. Is it over?" "Yes, baby," Sara sighed, relief flooding through her. "It's over." Ethan stood beside her, gaze darting around. "Did we really do it?" Together, Sara replied, the warmth beneath her skin tinged with joy. They embraced, the sun draped over them with a radiant glow. Suddenly, Josh materialized before them, a shimmering figure of light, smiling with love and peace. You did it. You fought. Always remember, we're together, no matter what. Tears brimmed in Sara's eyes, seeing him restored, filled with love and light. I won't forget, she promised, feeling his warmth seep into her soul. Go now, Josh said gently, facing the warm horizon. Live for the moments we can't share. Thank you, she whispered, surrendering to the beauty of the moment. Slowly, Josh began to dissolve into the light, blending with the sun, bright and unyielding. Mommy, what's happening? Ethan asked, confused. He's always with us, sweetheart. In our hearts, Sara confirmed, pulling her children close. As the family turned their eyes toward the horizon, they stepped forward into new light, into hope, onto paths anew. No more shadows lurked, all of that was behind them now. But one thing remained: an unbreakable bond formed in love and courage would guide them through anything ahead, and as the sun set across Hawthorne Creek, they ventured into their tomorrow, heartbeats synchronized, pain transformed into strength, glad to greet the life waiting beyond the dark woods, forever free. Remember, dear audience, you need to subscribe now, so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Let's keep this community alive.